Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Easy Mini Painting with me, Christopher Ridge. And we're going to be knocking out more of the Resident Evil 2 board game. We're going to get all of these police zombies right here. They look like they're having a little bit of a good time here, kind of thriller, walking, dancing, whatever. I don't even know what I'm saying. Let's just get started here. So the first thing that we will have started with is just a layer of ash gray for everything. That'll make a good base coat for the zombies because the ash gray is what we're going to use as the skin tone. So basically just get a solid layer of ash gray onto there, and that will make for a nice sort of primer. The other thing that I did too is I just went over the bases really quickly. I just went over those with matte black. That's a pretty straightforward thing to do, so not really any sense in showing it off, not a big deal. But I figured that the first thing that we'll do after that, after we get all of our base coats on there, is we're gonna knock out all of their t-shirts. And I think that their shirts, well, t-shirts, they're shirts, like their uniforms, their polos, not the right, I don't know what the right word is, but they're uniforms, they're shirts. And I think that the police in the Resident Evil games, or at least Resident Evil 2, have very old-fashioned color schemes. So their shirts are like a light blue color, and their pants are a very, very dark, sort of dark blue, almost grayish, blackish color. But let's start with the shirts, and to do that we're going to use electric blue. Alright, and you don't need to go after super strong details, so I'll just use like a miniature brush, like a base coat brush. Use whatever's comfortable for you, but I don't think that we need to worry about anything too specific or detailed with this particular step. So we'll just use a slightly larger brush, not like a huge, giant, no detail brush, but yeah, one that you don't need to concern yourself with too much. Alright, a little something like that. That just gets a layer of electric blue onto the shirt. Make sure that you just get around to all sides of it. Make sure you get the underside of the sleeve and all that kind of stuff. Not a huge deal, but you're just going to go ahead and do that for all four of them. I did, too, just leave off the big hole on the side of the right arm there because I think that that's supposed to be sort of like torn through and exposing skin. So if you can, just try to go around that, but I don't think it'll be a big deal if you just go over it completely, too. But yeah, we're just going to do that for all four of them. Alright, and that's it for all of the shirts on their uniforms. And those are looking pretty uniformed right there. I like how those are looking. Next up, we're going to move on to all of their pants, and like I was saying earlier, we're kind of going for the sort of old-fashioned look with the lighter shirt colors and the darker pants colors. So we're going to be using some deep blue for that. Alright, and I think that you can just continue using the same brush. I think that that will be just fine. This is another sort of instance where you want to sort of be careful about the holes in the pants, because you can see on the left thigh right there that there's a big tear in the pants, and I think that that's supposed to be skin exposed on the bottom, so just make sure to go over that. Again, though, if you're not super comfortable with doing that, I think that you can kind of just go over the whole thing, and I don't think that it'll make a huge difference. I don't think anybody's really gonna notice or care or mind, so whatever you're the most comfortable with. But if you want to get a little bit of practice in detail-wise, you can kind of go around those holes. Alright, and a little bit something like that. There you go, that looks pretty good. Yeah, like I said, you want to try to avoid painting all of the skin and all of the sort of like holes. I also avoided painting the belt because I figured we'll go over the belt with a separate color. One thing that we are going to be doing a little bit differently with the police officers that we did compared to the other zombies is we are just going to use uniform colors for everything. And I think that that's okay. I don't think it's a huge deal to have to tell the individual models apart when you're playing the board game, although I have to confess I don't know because I still have not even played the board game or really looked into how it really gets played. But I just really like painting the miniatures, and painting the minis is really fun, and I hope that I can encourage you to paint the miniatures that come with the board game and get you to have fun with them. But yeah, so we're going to be using uniform colors for the police zombies here, and I think that that will be a-okay. All right, and there we go. So now we've got all of the pants on our police zombies. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to paint those belts that we were talking about. We're going to get those belts and those shoes, and I think we can use the same color for it. And I figured we would just use a dark brown, dark gray kind of color, so I think that dark stone will work for that. All right, and I think that, again, we can just continue using the same brush. I think that that's working out pretty well with us so far. All right, little something like that for the shoes. Again, you're just wanting to get a very basic sort of brownish gray color on there, and I think that that works pretty well. And again, we're going to do the same thing with the belt, so I would just go over the entirety of the belt. You know, you can kind of go over, if you want, you can go back over the belt loops with the deep blue if you want to. I wouldn't worry about it, to be honest. I don't think it'll be a big deal. If you just want, you know, really easy, accessible, simple, quick table-ready miniatures, I think that this will work just fine. Heck, I would even say if you really want to, this is probably just optional, and you could just go over the belts and everything with the same deep blue color. I think that that would be okay too. But again, that's up to you. We're going to go for just a little bit of variety since, you know, all of the police zombies are all going to be the same colors anyway. There you go, just a little something like that. And that just gives a little bit of coloration, a little bit of variety to the belt compared to the shirt and the pants. And the shoes are obviously the same color there. So that looks pretty darn cool. All right, so we're just going to do that for all four of them. All right, and there you go. So now we've got all of the belts and the shoes, and they're starting to look a little bit more like actual police officers. Next up, let's get their hair, and I imagine that we'll just use some regular brown hair for all of them. I think that'll do okay. So we'll use some monster brown for that. There we go, just something as simple as that. Really, really straightforward. That'll do just fine. It's a little bit more blonde than brown, but that's okay. So we're just going to do that for all four of them. There we go, straightforward as that. There's not a lot else to do. We're actually coming up on the details here, and then we're just going to do all of our, you know, sort of touch-ups and little things, but those are all pretty easy. So I want to get all of the badges that they've got. If we can zoom in pretty close here, you can see a badge, like right above where his heart is at. You can see a badge there, and then he's also got one like on his sleeve, on his left sleeve there, similar to Leon's uniform actually. So I figured we would just get some gold on both of those. So we'll take out some greedy gold, just a nice solid gold color, and we'll use that for all of their badges. Once again, very straightforward. I think that we can just use the base coat brush as long as we've just got a nice point on it. Well, something like that. That's all that you really need. That's perfect. Barely any work at all. All right, and now we've got all of the badges on there. Now, after we've done that, we've done basically everything that we really want to do in terms of all of the base colors. I'm going to let them fully dry because now we're going to be moving on to the Quickshade, but I would like for them to be completely dry for that, so I'm just going to give them a couple of minutes and I'll be right back. All right, and now that they are completely dry, we're going to move on to our strong tone, and we're going to use that as our Quickshade. That's what's going to fill in all of the little tiny little cricks and cracks and all that in the miniature, and it's going to give us our nice shade, and it's going to give a lot of depth to everything. And I'm just going to use some really old, big, ratty, no-name brush here. It doesn't really matter too much what you use. But yeah, I really, really like this stuff a lot because it just, yeah, gives you all of the shade that you need for your miniatures. As you can kind of see as I'm going here, it sort of fills in everything and it gives more shape and texture and depth, and everything looks more real, and that's the kind of thing that we're going for. Go ahead and do one here just to kind of show you what it looks like as I go. And then I'll just do all of them all at once. After you do this, you do want them to be dry, because next up we're going to... Oh, you know what I just realized? I don't think I realized this before. I think they're wearing watches. As you can kind of see, like, on his left arm there, on his left hand. Yeah, he's definitely wearing a watch of some kind. You know what? That's okay. I think that if we just leave it as gray like that, with the rest of the skin tone, I think that, you know, you can get the shape of a watch there, but you don't necessarily need to obsess over the details. I guess if you really want to, you could maybe go over the watch with like the gold color that you used for the badges. I think that that would work just fine. But, you know, if you also just want to leave them unpainted, you know, you just want to leave them that ash gray color, I think that'll be okay. And I'll do that just to kind of show you what it looks like, and that way if you're thinking, you know, oh, but it's not going to look right if I don't paint the watches, I think it'll look a-okay. There you go, a little something like that. That just fills everything in and makes it look nice and complete. Now, it's also going to look a lot better as it dries, so go ahead and get a nice layer of this strong tone over all of them, let them completely dry, and then move on to the next step. Alright, and the next thing that we're going to do is, I would say an optional thing, but I would also encourage you to do it if you have the option. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a layer of matte varnish over it, and this will just add a little bit of an extra layer of protection for the miniature, an extra layer of sort of thickness so that the paint won't rub off as easily. It also just sort of brings the colors together and gives it a little bit more of a sort of unifying, uniformed look to everything. Again, it's optional because this varnish that I'm using doesn't even come with the Army Painter Mega Paint set. So if that's all that you have, then you wouldn't be able to do this. So it's not a huge deal, but I also would say that if you can get it, I would encourage you to do so because it is very nice. But yes, it is very optional. That's all that I want to say. So I'm just going to, I mean, I've done that on previous videos too, so you don't need to see me do that. So I'm going to apply that, let it dry, and then we're going to move on to all of our blood, similarly to how we did the male zombies and the female zombies. So let's add this, let it dry, and I'll be right back. And after that varnish is completely dry, we're just going to bloody them up, and then we're completely done. So what we'll do is we'll take out our glistening blood, and we'll just go ahead and add a little bit of blood here and there to different spaces and make them all juicy and gross, and that's what we want to do. I don't think it really matters what brush you use, so I'm just going to take a ratty old no-name, just a no-detail brush. And the thing that I have said before in the previous videos, and I'll say it again over and over again, less is more when it comes to the blood. Don't go too nuts. Don't go just splattering it around everywhere and just making the mini completely covered in blood, because that will just become too much and it'll become too distracting. So apply it somewhat conservatively and do just a little tiny bit at a time. And don't just make like huge blobs. Kind of splatter it, dot it. You can kind of see what I'm doing right here. I'm going for the wound on the shoulder here, and I'm just lightly going around the whole wound. And then what I'm doing is I'm actually dragging the brush downward like this to make it look like the blood is sort of running down his arm. Just like that. Look at that. See? That's nice and cool. All right. I also like to add, I do think that one place where you can kind of just splatter it on there without really much care is around the mouth, because it's very clear that they're munching on people. So they're going to have a really, really, really bloody mouth. But again, we'll just sort of drag the brush down like that to make it look like it's kind of running down his chest and his chin. Just like that. We'll do the same thing with the wound on his leg here. Another place that I would say is okay to just sort of splatter it is on the hands, like on the palms of the hands, because they've probably been chewing on people that have been ripped up and chewed up and all that, so don't be afraid to just kind of go a little bit crazy on the hands. Again, not insane, but, you know, just have a little bit of fun. And then we'll also kind of go over the leg here, because there's a lot going on the leg, wound-wise. I've got a cat on the table, and he doesn't seem very interested in getting down. Toki, you're blocking my light now, boo. Toki Wartooth. Come on. Ah, you're knocking stuff over. I just realized that he stepped. He stepped on my blood puddle, and he got little paw prints everywhere, which means he's now tracking blood on, well, fake blood, on my floor. Toki. Well, he's got a bunch of purple on his paw now. That was me trying to wipe it off. That's okay. We'll be alright. You can get a little bit of blood on various other parts too. Like, I'll just add a little bit, like, to his chest here. Just some splatter like that. And like I said, if you're using kind of an old ratty brush, you can kind of get the effect of like a splatter there almost. As long as you just apply it really lightly, really carefully. Just like that. And that kind of thing will work just fine. So we're going to do that with all of them. And there's really no right or wrong way to do any of the blood splatter. Just kind of do whatever comes naturally to you. You know, again, just try to have a little bit of restraint. Don't go too nuts. And everything will turn out a-okay. Everything will be just great. So just have a little bit of fun. Get at it and just sort of paint some blood on there however you feel is the most appropriate for any given police officer. And you may be asking yourself right now, why are we applying the blood after we already did the varnish? Well, I've addressed that in the previous videos, but I will address it here as well. So the varnish that we used was a matte varnish, which tries to reduce the amount of shine, you know, the shininess, reflectiveness of the paint. It doesn't look quite as reflective. Well, we kind of want this glistening blood to be nice, wet, well, you know, glistening. That's kind of the point of it. It's glistening blood. So if you go over, you know, the wounds with this blood and then you go over everything with a matte varnish afterward, then the blood won't have any reflectiveness to it. It won't have any shine to it. And that's not what we're looking for. We want the blood to be nice and runny, nice and shiny and wet. And if you want the best effect for that, make sure to go over everything after you apply the matte varnish. Again, if you use the matte varnish, I would say that it's, you know, again, just kind of completely optional also. That's all. All right, and I think that will just about do it. So there you go, everybody. Those are the police zombies from the Resident Evil 2 board game. I think that they turned out just darn fine. I think that those will work out pretty well for you. Again, just stick with the sort of lighter color scheme for the shirts and the darker color scheme for the pants. And as long as you use that ash gray for the skin tone and you use that dark tone as a quick shade, then I think you'll get pretty much everything that you want. And again, just be a little bit conservative with the blood. Don't go completely nuts with all of the blood, but I think that as long as you stick to that sort of, you know, concept and outline, I think that you will crank out some beautiful miniatures there. So if you liked the video, go ahead and throw it a like. If you want to see the rest of the Resident Evil 2 board game getting painted, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I think next week I'm probably going to knock out all of the zombie dogs, I think. Unless, like, somebody else requests something else first, but I don't really know, you know. I am doing one board game at a time, so I'm going to be sticking with all of the Resident Evil 2 board game before I move on to anything else. One thing, just a little bit of an update, I did just back on Kickstarter the Wolfenstein 2, or just Wolfenstein board game that's coming out. They collected all the pledges for those a couple of weeks ago, so I am looking forward to those. I will definitely be painting them for the channel. I am really looking forward to them. I really like the Wolfenstein IP quite a bit. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I do want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time on Easy Mini Painting. Have a good night. Bye-bye.